much.
Good morning. Afternoon. It's morning for me.
No, I'm Michael Keaton.
Oh, no, I'm Michael Keaton.
Oh, I thought I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
You're down here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to this press conference for Spotlight. We've got about half an hour. Quick word on the film. Spotlight opens in UK cinemas, as you know, on Friday, January the 29th. The film had its world premiere in competition in Venice last September, and it's been nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director, and for 3 BAFTAs, including Best Film and Best Screenplay. Congratulations, all of you, for the film and for those nominations as well.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to welcome today 5 very special guests, 3 filmmakers and 2 of the journalists depicted in the film, who, along with their colleagues, won a Pulitzer for their reporting on the systemic cover-up of abuse in the Catholic Church in the Boston area. Starting at the other end, I'd like to welcome Michael Keaton, who, as you know, plays Walter Robbie Robinson in the film, Mark Ruffalo, who plays Mike Rezendes, Tom McCarthy, who's the film's director and co-writer, Walter Robinson, who has had a 3-decade-plus career with the Boston Globe and is currently editor-at-large for the paper, and for 7 years ran the paper's Spotlight team, and Mike Rezendes. He spent almost a decade as part of the Spotlight team, whose work you will have seen in the film, and he continues to be a reporter for the Boston Globe. Welcome, all of you. Quick question from me for everybody, then we'll open up. First one, question for both for Walter and for Mike. I mean, the film is terrific and serious and has been widely and rightly praised. But when you first heard it was happening, or the idea that it would be a film made of yourselves and your work, what were your initial reactions? Was there any fear?
Well, our first reaction was disbelief, because it never occurred to us, though the stories we had done obviously were of some significance, it never occurred to us that anybody would find it interesting to know how we made the sausage, how the reporters did their work. And we were persuaded that there was a story there, and over time we came to realize that Tom McCarthy and Josh Singer, once they got into the story, did so much of their own original reporting and got back into our contemporaneous emails and documents that they were determined to tell the story almost precisely the way it occurred. And so we're quite gratified by that and quite pleased.
Yeah, listen, this was a roll of the dice. It is a risk. A story like this can go wrong 6 ways to Sunday. And Tom McCarthy and co-writer Josh Singer, they were under no obligation whatsoever to involve us in the process. So we're just lucky that our story landed in the hands of such talented filmmakers and such incredibly talented and committed actors.
Tom, it's a fairly unique opportunity for you telling a recent historical story where the main protagonists are still very much alive and working. What was your and your co-writers' approach to that? How did you decide to approach that opportunity, and what advice did you give to your actors in terms of that opportunity as well?
I mean, the opportunity to actually have the reporters available to us?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's, look, it never occurred to us to work any other way. From our first sit-down, I think, it's important to note that there was no source material, per se, on the investigation, that we had to conduct our own series of interviews and research to try to unearth this investigation that occurred 12 years prior, for the most part. But from our first sit-down with these guys, Josh and I took the train up to Boston from New York and started chatting with them, both individually and collectively. And, it was so compelling, immediately compelling to us. And we realized that we were just going to be going back again and again and again to that well, and we did for 2.5, 3 years, right up. I mean, they're here with us, to give you some sense. But it was incredibly exciting, I will say. It was such an exciting process. And quickly, and I don't know if it's because we were looking at it through the lens of this particular film, but our research very quickly did feel like an investigation. It did feel like reporting. We felt like very amateur journalists trying to do our job and do it well. And to have these guys as our sort of guides and collaborators through it was just so unique of an opportunity, and that goes for every one of them, including Marty, who was for half of it down at the Washington Post. And that continued right up through production. My entire creative team were bothering these guys about their wardrobe, what they had on their desk, what they had at home. It really continued on and on and on. So it was a truly exciting bit of collaboration.
A question for Mark and for Michael. I mean, obviously the film tells an incredibly important story in terms of its own story, but I wonder what your feelings are about the importance of the film in what it has to say about any kind of abuse, not just the abuse we see in the film, any kind of establishment cover-up, and also the role of journalism in acting as a check against that.
Well, as I've said, this is, for me, this is, I'm blessed. That sounds like maybe a bit much, but I get to do what I do for a living. That's the one thing that is fantastic. And then you get to work with these kind of people, and the actors and Tommy and everybody involved, and then these journalists. So that's another bonus. And then it sounds odd to say, or a little, maybe at first a little off center to say I'm blessed or fortunate or grateful to be able to tell a story like this, because who wants to deal with this kind of subject matter every day? But you're in a position to do what you do for a living. Somebody gives you a check, very small one, and say something about something that might, to me, and I'm convinced that this will change and help people's lives. So it was all in all just a really great, pardon me, sorry, really great and really satisfying experience.
And Mark, do you think opportunities like this don't come along that often as an actor?
No, I mean, listen, you get to make, I'm in the entertainment business, and we get to make different kinds of movies. Some are just purely for entertainment, and then sometimes you make a movie that culturally pushes the culture to a particular place. That sort of happens from the culture as well. I read the script, and I immediately felt this is a story that we have heard, but it's time to revisit it again, and the culture is ready to revisit it, and we have this new pope, and there's a space open for this to really resonate in the world. And it's in those moments where film is used as a tool to teach, I think, and to coalesce ideas. And Mike, to reflect on what Michael said, it's just a great honor to be in the right place at the right time to be able to be part of that dialogue. It doesn't happen often in a career. It doesn't even happen that often in filmmaking, where you can really influence the conversation and push an issue in one direction or another, and this just happened to be one of those moments.
And it may actually, I've been thinking about this today during these, during these interviews, and it may spawn other opportunities to make movies that are about something. Now, this movie, in terms of making a few dollars, it'll do all right, and nobody's going to lose any money, I give Open Road and participant in anonymous content and all the people who helped do it a lot of credit. And now there may be others. The other warning sign here to myself, certainly, because I get sick of hearing my own voice, but we start to sound, what people used to call highfalutin, or, we start to speak from on high, like, aren't we fabulous people because we did this. The fabulous people were the people from the Boston Globe who did it, and the fabulous people are people who do stuff out there in the world. I'm an actor, Mark's a really socially minded dude, and I try to be.
So are you?
Yeah, and I try to do my little. I do try to do my little thing. But the guys like these, like Mike and
They
Walter,
change the world.
yeah, and a lot of people everywhere. You read these extraordinary stories about people out there doing things, starting little schools, and we barely. So for us to do, just move the needle a tiny little bit is, that's pretty great.
Thanks, all of you. And start taking questions from the floor. There are 3 questions to begin with. One there, then I'll come here, then I'll come here, please. Thanks.
Can I ask our journalist friends the pivotal moment that you realised that you were just about to roll back that can of worms of a really callous and calculating cover-up, sorry for the alliteration. I mean, there must have been a moment when you thought, dear God, this is so much more than we anticipated. And can I ask our actor friend, what was the moment when you were turning the page of that script and you thought, geez, if I'm not in this, I'm going to go and bang my head against the toilet door?
Well, I did have a moment like that when I was doing the research into Father John Gagan, who was the priest with whom we opened the series. After I learned that Father Gagan had molested more than 150 children in 6 different parishes over 30 years, with the knowledge of his superiors in the Boston Archdiocese, I looked up his assignment at his very last parish after 30 years of molesting children, and I found that his last assignment was to be in charge of the altar boys. And that I felt was just so depraved. I couldn't understand how that could possibly happen. And it really was at that moment when I told myself, this is going to be a really big story.
Walter, was there a moment for you?
You know, the moment that shocked me the most when we got into the story and we started to get a lot of documents was to realize that in all of the thousands of church documents about the abuse that were passed internally between the cardinals and the bishops about what to do about Father so-and-so who had done this, and where are we going to send him, and how are we going to reassign him, and how are we going to keep this quiet. It was always about how to keep this quiet. There was never, ever, ever a mention made in any document about what had happened to the children. And that just blew me away, that the Catholic Church, number one, would countenance this, enable this behavior, cover it up, and not give a damn about a single one of the thousands of children who had been harmed by this.
And the second part of that question, Mark and Michael, was there a point when you were reading the script where you felt that you were saying you had to be in this had to be made?
Look, this could have been about dentistry. You know, when I heard how the cast was, I think Mark was on, and I really liked Mark's work, and I had seen probably every one of Tom's movies. So, and then the script was just good. So forget the subject matter. I went. I'm over halfway in at that point anyway. Sounds weird to say, wow, child abuse, that's the icing on the cake. That's a weird thing. But as I said earlier, I go, wow, this means something. I'll tell you, what happens is it keeps happening. You know, these last couple of days doing these interviews, it keeps hitting me again and again. You know, like when we're doing the scene, we read the script, we went over it and over and over it. We rehearsed, we had long discussions, we talked about our personal experiences in the Catholic Church, and then we did the scene, and then we rehearsed the scene, and then we shot more of the scene. We shot scenes around. We got shooting. You're doing like take 6, take 8, take 8, and then you know when we're sitting around the table and we're listening, and it's revealed. Now, granted, you know if we're decent actors, we're really in the moment, living the moment, but still, it hits you even then. You go, Jesus, this is, you know, I already knew the story. I knew the number of priests. I knew how it got exposed. You'd think I'd have read it. You think I would have read it and did what you said, you know, gone, oh my God. It did, but it keeps happening. Today, Walter said something, and that was a statistic that I either had forgotten or didn't realize, and it's kind of unbelievable. So there, it just kind of seems to keep happening. One more thing, real quickly, just as an actor, which is generally really boring talk, but we kind of became. First of all, when you're an actor, I think you kind of are. If not a journalist, you're investigative. You got to investigate, right? You got to ask certain questions. You've got to ask certain questions about yourself. You got to delve in and ask people questions about things. And if you're curious, I think that's a huge bonus. You have to be curious as a journalist. There's no way. That's the starting point, I think. To watch the other actors work, and I think myself too. It was such an easy kind of groove to find in a way, because sometimes I'd be on the set and I'd be listening to everybody talk, and you'd be maybe not in the middle of the scene, and you go, we're kind of weirdly doing this on some kind of plane, you know. We were kind of, which is a great feeling, which is a really, really great feeling, and there are similarities, I think, between these guys and us, or we took it on. It's a kind of a cool outer and inner body experience. to have. And our leader, Tommy, Thomas, you know, you find yourself like I would look at him, and I hadn't hung out. I started watching Mike. I was watching Mark work, and I thought, wow, Mark's got an interesting process. And I kind of observe how people work, you know. And I thought, I can't tell if he is working. I don't know what he's doing exactly. Then I met Mike, and I went, oh, wow, this is fascinating. This is really interesting to watch. And then I noticed I started to, without trying to, not that I was telling them what to do, but I started like on the set, subtly on my own without ever saying anything. Just I wanted to put a tiny subtle vibe out that at the end of the day, it's me. Now that doesn't, me being him, being Walter. And so you show up for work every day kind of doing that, you know? And then the super Robbie is Tom. Like I'm the Robbie, but he really becomes the super Robbie, because Robbie was the boss, Robbie was the player coach. Robbie, at the end of the day, said how it was going to go down. And Tom would let you do certain things and then be very ultra clear about not doing other stuff. It was like, hey, I think this line here, blah, blah. And he'd go, I don't know, read it. And I'd read it, and he'd go, no, say it as it is. That's pretty good. And then you find yourself going, okay, yes, sir. Sorry about it up.
Thank you. Move on to the next question here, please. Thanks.
Question for Walter and Mike. We live in a world where we're seeing newspapers, magazines disappearing all the time. We've got an internet that's obsessed with celebrity gossip and listicles. This sort of
Hey, what's wrong with that?
Journalism, you know, you guys give it the spotlight, it still does. Will they survive? You know, it's too important to lose.
Well, you know, we think a lot about that. The movie really underscores the importance of not so much our story, but the importance of investigative reporting and holding public officials and powerful individuals accountable for their actions. And since we're sitting here in the presence of reporters, and since Joseph Pulitzer once said, every reporter a hope, every editor a disappointment, I'd like to level some criticism at editors. Editors at newspapers in America and here in the UK have cut many, many positions because of the economic calamity caused by the internet. And they have almost always, in most cases, chosen to cut investigative reporting. And in fact, if you assess reader attitudes about what they want from their news people, both in television and print, the first thing on the list almost always is investigative reporting. So editors have been penny-wise and pound-foolish in cutting this kind of resource from newspapers, and they ought to damn well smarten up. And I hope I've been polite in the way I said it.
Yeah, I think Robbie's absolutely right about all of that. You know, there is another side of this, however, which is the internet has also provided us with a lot of tools to practice investigative reporting, and it's given rise to some interesting models for investigative reporting. I think there are several online-only investigative reporting organizations that are doing really, really high-quality work. And I think we're in a period of transition here, and there are many things about it that are troubling. There are several things about it that are hopeful, and I just think that investigative reporting is so essential to democracy that we're going to get through this, and we're going to find a model that works, and investigative reporting will survive and thrive, and seriously, God help us if it doesn't.
Thank you. Question there, please.
Were you in any way nervous, wary, cautious, suspicious of a story being made and how you would be portrayed on screen by an actor? And Mark, were you in any way negative, suspicious of the press previously, and having worked with these guys and done this story? Has your perception now changed?
Well, I'm a fan of the movies, and I'd followed Mark's career just out of general interest, and I was a great admirer of his. So, you know, I was thrilled to death when I heard that Mark was going to play me in the movie. Now, when he came to my house and opened up his notebook and turned on his iPhone and started taking pictures and asking me personal questions, I began to wonder just exactly how this was going to go. But I sort of slapped myself around metaphorically, and I told myself, hey, pal, you do this to people all the time, so relax. And
I just picture you in the bathroom having that conversation and him listening.
and after that, it really went fantastically well, and I developed even more respect for Mark than I already had. He worked very, very hard and put his entire heart and soul into this project, and the results you see, which is to say he succeeded brilliantly.
You know, I've always had a really healthy kind of respect for the press. You know, there's the gossip stuff, but I've never really taken that seriously. It's like a snack for people. I don't think people really take it to heart. They sort of digest it, and poop it out later. They're just like. Sorry, if you're not you guys, just the gossip people.
For the record, you guys don't poop.
Yes, and I'm kind of a news junkie, and you know, I've also been in the trenches where on certain issues where we really relied upon journalism to help us move things in the right direction, and it was always, you're always sort of trying to find people that were willing to write a story about something that maybe wasn't popular, or give a spotlight to folks who you don't normally hear from. So I've always held it in high regard, but what I got to learn from working with Mike and with Walter and the rest of the Spotlight team and the Boston Globe people was, you know, the deep commitment, what a deep commitment it takes, and what it costs to do it, and also Mike in particular was his just immense humanity, you know. To confront an issue like this in the way he did, you have to leave a lot of space open for people to be human, even if they're on the wrong side of this story. And that's how people will open up to you and talk to you. And he was so equanimable. I sat at his side for days watching him work a story, watching him, hearing him on the phone, hearing him interview people. And I was fascinated by how much space he left for people, even on the wrong side of a story, to be able to write themselves, to be able to suddenly become part of the right side of the story. And keeping that space open made the story have much more nuance, and made the story, he convinced people to do stuff that wasn't directly within their interests, based on the idea that you can do something to right what has been wronged. And that was remarkable. And that wasn't my general perception of a dogged reporter. I always think of a bulldog just hammering away until they get what they need. But he had a way of doing it that was very, well, let's say this. He's gentle on the people and hard on the problem. And I thought that was a fantastic approach. And the guy's a master at what he does. And so I was very honored to be able to sit and watch how that worked and how important it was. And I saw him change legislation with 2 or 3 articles. He literally changed the state's legislation on a certain issue where people were being hurt. And he did that basically by himself. I mean, he had the Globe behind him and the resources behind him. But I can't think of any other movement or groups of people or communities that can affect that much change in that precise a way in such a short period of time. And that's why it's so important that we have journalism, to me.
And that's what you hope kids, younger people, when they see this movie, can get excited about and feel empowered, hopefully. And, you know, listen to Mark talk about that, because Mike, Robbie, good reporters, the commonality, I think, between if you're doing your work correctly as an actor and being a good journalist is listening. You have to listen. And it sounds like what he's describing is, you know, Mike left room to, you know, take judgment away and just listen and hear, you know, just listen. And you kind of listen on two levels too, don't you? You listen literally to the conversation, pardon me, and then you kind of listen into the bigger picture, like what's coming, what's all coming together, what's out there, I guess, you know.
Thank you. We've only got a few more minutes left, so I'm going to take a question there and a question at the back as well, and if I can, I had promised a question down here as well. Please.
Hi, my question is for Michael, Mark and Tom. Is there any personal religious conflict between the actors or the crew with this storytelling process?
No, not for me.
You mean between those of us on the...
You have to tell this story that doesn't portray Catholicism in a particularly great light.
But I mean, do you mean that with people like maybe a crew member who felt strongly about Catholicism? No.
Did anyone say anything or were
No, I don't remember.
saying, oh, this is tough for me because
Yeah.
I grew up as a Catholic?
I think it was probably, you know, there were probably people in the movie we don't even know that, you know, it was quite tough. It's disappointing to me, you know, that's putting it mildly. One of the scenes that I keep saying, one of the scenes that affects me the most when I saw the movie was when Rachel's grandmother, you know, she struggles when you watch her struggle and look at her and say, how am I going to tell her this? And then she kind of tells her that she asks for a drink of water. I mean, just me saying that, you know, because when you take someone's faith away, oh boy, you know, now we're talking about a whole other level. My mom was as devout a Catholic as there is, you know, and I was an altar boy. We went to Mass. My mom went to Mass every day. And I think of that, you know, what that would have done to her, you know, that would have, that's big, you know. It's one thing to do what we're talking about here, but then you crush someone's faith. That's another level.
Thank you. Go to the back of the room there for a question, please.
Hi. Tom, congratulations on making the movie. I've got a question for Walter and Mike. So it's been over 10 years since the story broke through Spotlight. Have you managed to change your feelings towards the Catholic Church? Because I know in the movie it says you were both raised Catholic. Have you even been able to go to the church? And also for Mark and Michael, kind of a follow-up on that question, how do you, after being involved in such a serious movie with real-life events, separate it from your personal life?
Question about how it may have changed your relationship with the Catholic Church. I wonder maybe you can add to that how much you think it changed your city's relationship with the Catholic Church as well.
Well, certainly in Boston and in many, many other cities, the Catholic Church's political power pretty much disappeared once these revelations took hold. And their ability to dictate what went on in the community, which had been profound before, also vanished. And that's appropriate. And there's much more skepticism among Catholics for their institution. As for myself, like most people, I have my faith. My faith is not in the institution of the Catholic Church. My feeling toward the church now is I go to a Catholic church for weddings and funerals, but otherwise not.
I confess I was, so to speak, loath to have any of my personal life in the movie, but the great reporters here and the filmmaking crew and the cast did manage to get some in, and what you see in the film is very accurate. I mean, I was a lapsed Catholic at the time, but I identified as a Catholic. We have a writer in Boston, in the Boston Globe, who's a former priest, James Carroll, who writes about Catholic issues, and I always sort of considered myself a James Carroll Catholic. But quite honestly, after reporting the story and encountering the lies of so many high Catholic officials, that I think the break at this point is irreparable. I don't really identify as a Catholic now.
Anyone else like to answer that question before we will have to come to an end?
I wouldn't. I haven't been a good Catholic since I've been an altar boy. I've never pretended that I'm not. I don't know if I'm lapsed or what I am. You know, you're a good Catholic if you're a good Catholic. But I will defend people as much as I think organized religion has. As much as I hate what's happened in the world, based on what people call or what is organized religion and people's alleged faith in things. I'm a defender of it, however. You know, I think faith is good for people. I'm envious often, but I've got my own. I'm totally cool with how I am in the world. And my vision of what people call God or whatever you want to call it. You know, I'm cool with it. I know I've had it. I'm good there. But to keep beating this movie is not really not about to me anyway. You know, religion so much. You know, it's about institutions. It's about people who take power and seize power and totally use their power to take advantage of the disenfranchised and the powerless. And it happens in a lot of places. It happens to women all over the world. It happens in the Middle East every second. It happens, they're going to get ready, they're going to do some eye rolling here because I've been hitting this pretty hard. It happens right now with the UN peacekeepers who are taking advantage of kids, talk about disenfranchised. These kids in Africa who come out of drought-ridden countries, they don't have a shot in the world, and you're there to specifically to protect them. So so for me, that's what in the bigger picture, that's what it's about. I'm not out to beat up the Catholic Church. You know, I still drop in and light a candle for my mom or meditate in the Catholic Church because it's familiar territory. It's kind of home field, you know. But that's about as far as it goes for me. But I'm not going to go out and, you know, beat it up. I'm going to beat up the institution. I'm going to beat up, you know, the Vatican maybe for not coming out and being strong about a lot of things. But that said, I think the Pope's pretty cool.
Thanks all of you. I'm going to bring things to a close. Thank you all for the film Spotlight, and thank you for your reporting that led to the film as well. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.